This episode is brought to you by Homemade. What is Homemade?
Well, glad you asked. Homemade is a turnkey house flipping service we've built to solve the needs of aspiring flippers like you who want to get started in house flipping but want to do it with the backing of a professional and experienced team.
We've designed Homemade so that our team will be with you through every step of the house flipping journey.
Our team will deliver investment-grade properties straight to your inbox,
Work with you to design your project to maximize ROI,
oversee all the renovations, and handle all permitting requirements.
and along the way, we'll hook you up with our vetted network of service providers to help finance, insure, and stage your property.
Once the project is wrapped, we'll be with you arm in arm to execute your exit plan, whether that's through a sale as a flip or holding the property in your personal portfolio as either a long or short-term rental.
At Homemade, we've taken the outdated and frustrating house flipping process and turned it into a seamless and rewarding experience so that novice and even seasoned flippers can have access to this investment class without having to delve too deep into the nitty-gritty everyday headaches that this business often entails.
At Homemade, we do the heavy lifting for you. So if you've always wanted to flip a house, head on over to homemade.co to learn more about our platform and apply to work with us.
That's homemade.co. Peace.
Hey Flipsters, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Lincoln, and we are happily married.
But not to each other.
Yeah, we're old friends from college, and we're flipping houses in the Austin, Texas area.
And we're taking you along for the ride. Hey Flipsters, welcome back.
It's episode 7 of the Austin Flipsters podcast.
Never thought we'd be here.
No, dream big. Dream big. You too, your dreams can come true. You too could be doing 7 episodes of your own podcast if you just press record 7 times and start talking for an hour. I appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already.
Yep, we appreciate all 7 of y'all that are listening to this. My mom, your mom, Massiel's mom.
Yeah.
Lots of moms, so we
Shout out, mom.
appreciate
crew.
you guys.
How you been? I'm glad you got the memo about the plaid on plaid shirts.
I know.
We're looking matchy. We
The
look
number
good.
of times we never plan, maybe we should, I don't know, but the number of times that we end up wearing something very similar is eerie.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, I wear a lot of women's clothing, so that's part of the problem.
We got the same, I think we have a similar shade of Lululemon blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that happens.
We got our matching Stanley mugs.
I turned you on to these.
No.
Yes, I did. And you were mocking me the first time I brought my giant
Yeah.
water bottle. And then the next time I show up, you're here.
Well,
You got
my
one.
wife gave me this, so this is an obligatory cup
Okay.
for me. I have to use this.
Have you seen the memes of like, people are like, what I look like when I show up with my giant water cup? Have you seen these? It's this lady, she's like carrying a trash can around her house, like this awkwardly in her arm. And I was like, yeah, it is what I look like.
Yeah.
But I'm well hydrated, and that's what's important.
Okay, can I tell you this? I got my haircut the other day. This was validating. I got my haircut, and woman's back there cutting, and she goes, "Oh my God, do you drink a lot of water?" Yes, I do. Why do you ask? She's like, "Oh, I can tell you have really hydrated skin." I was like, "Really? You can tell just by the old skin?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I see a lot of dried out skin. I can tell
sure
who
she
smokes.
does.
I can tell who vapes, and I can tell who drinks a lot of water. And you,
Okay.
sir, drink a lot of water." So
Wasn't your Stanley you brought in with you?
it was
that gave
not.
away?
I didn't have the Stanley with me. She could just tell by the sheen of my skin that I'm getting a full 12 ounces or whatever you're supposed to do.
Well, what I'm wondering is like, do you remember growing up? Nobody had water.
No.
Like you would get one sip of water from the water fountain
Yes.
after recess. That was it. The whole
Yeah.
day. You didn't drink any water.
Oh yeah.
Like,
And yeah, you just had shriveled up kidneys everywhere you
I
went.
know. I did get a kidney stone in high school. I'm serious.
Yeah, toting your own water was not a thing. And now I send my kids off to school every day. They got their own little water thing.
Yeah.
I know.
Totally.
Well, they're going to be much, much better hydrated children than we ever were.
I know. We're setting them up for success in healthy life and
Such good
future
parents.
haircuts with.
Such good parents. Yeah. You're taking yours on trips and stuff. Mine, I presumably are learning to read at some point. So, we're killing it in this parenting game.
They don't know how to read?
One of them I know knows how to read.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Your little one's little.
He's in kindergarten.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
a joke. He's going to learn to read.
You will learn to read. They all do.
What have you been up to?
By the end of first grade. Let's give it time.
It's going to happen. What have you been up to, Lauren? What's up with you?
Not much. Just gearing up for the holidays here.
Oh, yeah. Lot to do.
Lots to do.
What's keeping you busy there? You got any hobbies or activities? Any fun things that you're doing that maybe we could banter back and forth about?
Yeah.
What
Well,
do you
actually,
got?
I was going to tell you. So I'm currently obsessed with this this New York Times Games app.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay, yeah.
specifically this connections game, which
Okay. Yeah, I heard about. Tell me about this.
Okay, so
'Cause I saw a TikTok about this, but tell me
Did
about.
you?
I saw a TikTok on it. I'm on the TikToks.
Okay.
I'm watching them. I'm learning.
So it's this game on the New York Times app, and you get 16 words, okay?
Yep.
And you have to categorize them into 4 groups of 4.
Okay.
So this was the game I started with, and I started playing it like every day. Now I'm like gateway drugged into all their games. So like the mini crossword comes out at 9 p.m. They've got this game called Framed, where you go around and make words with that's called Letterbox. I always call it Framed. It's like a broken connection in my head, but Letterbox, and you go around and make words. There's Wordle, but that's kind of basic. Everybody does that one, so I'm a little over it. Anyway, so connections.
Here's a question before we get into it. Do you actually do any work ever? Or you just sit and play New York Times games? How do you even possibly know when this stuff comes out?
This is time killer. This is like filler stuff. Like you're waiting on something and you just go and play. And
sure, yeah. And you're not just like obsessively refreshing the page.
No.
Okay.
It's
all right.
once a day. It takes me 30 seconds.
Let's play Connections. So it's
okay, yeah. I have not played this morning. Okay, so let's see how you do.
Do you want me to do it, or are we doing it together?
I want you to do it.
Okay. So it's 16 words. Draw, sketch, watch, charm, tie, freight, routine, bracelet, often, canine, belt, bit, pull, stone, joke, and appeal. Wow. Okay.
So you've got, and there's sometimes it's tricky. They'll try and trick you. They'll put words that could be in multiple categories.
Got it. Okay.
Let's see how you do.
All right. So let's see. Drawing and sketching are the same thing, but what would they go with?
This might be too boring.
Yeah. Sorry. This is. Yeah. That's okay.
I will say, this is Massiel, by the way. I would say I tried this one time. I couldn't do it. And I deleted the app. I deleted the whole app because I couldn't do it. I didn't understand it. I didn't read.
Some days are better than others.
Okay. Well,
want me to, I could start us off.
No, I want to do this. So, okay, a tie and a watch and a bracelet and a belt would all go together.
Try it.
And then what do? I submit this? Okay, so
okay, you got it. Accessories.
Oh, accessories. Oh,
okay. That's a category.
Those are accessories. Okay. All right. So then we got charm, freight, routine, sketch, often, canine, draw, bit, pull, stone, joke, and appeal.
I will say it's day to day. Like some days are easier and some days are not.
A joke and a routine. No, these don't work. This is not going to work.
How about a routine, a bit, a sketch, and a joke? That'd be like a stand-up.
Oh yeah, comedian's output. I see. Oh, charm, appeal, and draw are all the same things. And pull. Those are things that draw you in.
All right. Attraction.
So then that would mean
purple's the hardest. So
freight, stone, canine, and often.
I have no idea what the connection is, but let's find out.
Well, interesting. Yeah, what is the connection between those things? K9, freight.
Oh, see, was not going to get that.
10. One. That is a weak connection, I will say.
That is, yes.
Wow, I can't believe we just played that live. I just watched a TikTok on connections saying that basically, I guess it ripped off an old show. There used to be a show like this.
Okay.
It's called Connect to something. It was like basically a similar name, and they were kind of mad about it too, to be honest.
They ripped him off?
Yeah, this game is just a blatant ripoff of a former game show.
Isn't everything just a ripoff of everything?
No, this podcast is wholly original. No one's ever thought to film themselves just shooting the S with each other for extended periods of time.
Playing online word games.
Yeah, wow. This is what you come here for. Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, let's talk. How are you doing your fantasy football league?
I was sweating the fantasy football this weekend. I'm in a league. I've been in several of these leagues. I care nothing about fantasy football. Let me preface by saying that. I know nothing about fantasy football. I've been in several leagues where they just peter out. But this league that I'm in has staying power. And the one reason is because it has intense punishments.
Okay.
So like the loser every year has to do something very bad, the sacco. So like one year they had to run the Austin Half Marathon while everyone else drank beers.
Killer.
Yeah, they had to do a stand-up routine one year. You had to do a set at a stand-up, which I would have killed.
I was going to say.
That would have been fine.
It's not a punishment.
The year before I was in the bottom two, I was really sweating, is you had to hire a photographer to take basically like a calendar shoot of yourself recreating images from ESPN's The Body magazine, which is basically athletes naked in poses with their sports equipment, throwing a football or whatever. And they're like chiseled people. So you had to replicate shot for shot these.
Did you do that one?
I was in the running for this. And then I've never lost though.
Okay.
I'm unscathed.
Did you get the calendar?
No. But then it wasn't a calendar. You had to rent out an art expo and reveal the pieces like an art exhibit. That was by far the most terrifying.
And expensive.
Well, they're meant to be expensive. So this year's punishment is you've got to rent out a party barge.
Okay.
And then you have to dress up in a nautical themed costume of the league winner's choosing. So the Little Mermaid, or I don't know, maybe
like a pirate or something.
A pirate, whatever they choose.
Okay.
It has to be nautical themed, but it's of their choosing. And then you have to tend bar on this party barge.
That sounds easy compared to this previous one.
Expensive, but easy. I agree. Last year, the winner had to dress up as a horse and drive us all down to the horse track.
Y'all are into the dressing up thing.
This is a new development in the last 2 years. It's a humiliating costume. I was in the semifinals. I crushed my opponent.
Okay.
So I am free.
You're just going to be drinking on the barge.
I will be enjoying the party barge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pressure's off.
Pressure is off. Now I can fully enjoy it. And that's the only reason I pay attention to NFL. I mean,
football.
I like college football. I don't care about the NFL unless it affects my fantasy team. And then I'm focused up.
Yeah.
Not that focused up, because really you just play not to lose here. So I made it through this weekend.
How many people are in the league?
It's a 12-person league.
Oh, your odds are pretty good.
Ever in my favor, yeah.
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 Cool.
Hadn't lost yet. I'm good.
So speaking of failing, losing.
Yeah.
Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about why most investors fail at house flipping.
Yes.
Before they even get started.
Yeah. Let's get into it. We get asked this a lot, which is like, I want to get started, pitfalls to avoid. And I think there are a ton of unknown unknowns when you get started. There's just a ton that you have to get right for a project to go well, and a bunch of hidden landmines that can blow you up before the house even, has a lick of paint on it, before you even demo the first wall. There's a lot of ways to go south. So
yeah, and it's the reason why we created Homemade, right? It's because we've seen firsthand all the things that can go wrong leading up to a project, during a project, and really wanted a way for people to have access to this investment class without having to go through those pitfalls themselves, because we've been there, done that, and think we could save people a lot of headaches by helping them and working and walking alongside them on their first deal. So totally.
And I think that's a great point, because most of these mistakes that people make are not unique to their house. Like, I got bad luck and it just happens to have a tribe of squirrels living in the attic,
or a roof without decking,
or whatever. These are mistakes that happen on any project, and they happen over and over and over again. So we're just trying to pass on a few little lessons learned, and to your point, things that we've created in Homemade to help avoid these pitfalls, because they're not common. They're things that everybody potentially runs into.
Yeah. So let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Let's talk about all the ways that it can go wrong, even just trying to find your property in the first place.
Deal sourcing is huge. Yeah. So I think, when people get started in house flipping, they think it's about the projects themselves, right? So it's about construction, it's about renovations, whatever. You don't realize there's basically a whole separate business that you need to set up for deal sourcing to get a project in the first place.
Yeah,
right?
These are very needle in a haystack properties. I mean, because in order to get a property at the price that you need to get it at to renovate it and make money, you really need to buy right. And that's where a lot of people go wrong in the first place, is overpaying or buying something off the MLS at the price that it's listed at and expecting to be able to make money on the back end. So let's talk about all the things that we do to source properties, how we do it for ourselves and our clients, and then what people out there are doing it for the first time can be looking for and try for.
Totally. Yeah. So I think the number one thing about finding projects is just the number of shots on goal, or we call it kissing frogs, right? So
What is it like? You don't make 100% of the shots you don't take, or something like that.
You miss 100%.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Which, you know, I guess that's one way to look at it. Maybe you make all of those shots. I guess you can't. You're batting 1,000 on either way.
This is sliding doors. There's no way to know.
This is a counterfactual. There is no way to know if those shots went in or out. No, I mean, it's true. You've got to make a lot of attempts in order to get one of these projects. And that's basically the name of this game. If you could just walk out and you knew exactly that you could offer on one project, get it for the price that you needed for the numbers to work out and make money, you'd be done, right? But the reality is there has to be some sort of physical or financial distress in order for you to get a property at a steep enough discount for it to make enough sense typically. So I think everybody knows what physical distress in a property looks like. Like it's run down, it's beat up. So in order to sell that property, the owner of it is going to have to sell it at a price that makes sense to be able to rehab it and, you know, make a profit there on the back end. For other forms of distress, sometimes this is people that are, they're going through foreclosure or they've had, a death in the family, divorce. They've got other bills coming due. It's really hard to suss out that sort of thing. There are pre-foreclosure lists and things like that, but it's a little hard to tell. And in a low interest rate environment, it's even harder to tell because, people have more runway than they did because they've got a low interest rate mortgage on that. So it's really a numbers game. And I think a lot of early investors don't anticipate the amount of time and reps that it's going to actually take to secure a deal. You're talking about potentially 100 offers to get one of those accepted.
Yep.
Which is a lot of work because you've got to be able to underwrite those 100 properties, right? And I think new investors just don't anticipate that amount of work. And so they fail basically because they don't put enough shots on goal and they basically will stop.
Buy the first thing that they get under contract.
Well, they'll either buy something too early because, they're thrown in the towel. They say, I just need a project. And so they overpay, or they give up after making 10 offers. None of them are accepted. And I think at that point, it's pretty easy to say like, this just isn't a model that works, right?
Well, and I think originally when we were talking about Homemade, our vision for it was that people would come to us with deals already. We didn't want to have any kind of like conflict of interest of we sold you this deal and we're renovating it. But the reality is of all of our initial early clients, like they were like, no, I need help finding the house. That's part of this whole thing. That was part of the value service that we provide to them is because it is really hard. It is a full-time deal. We have a team of people in place that all day, every day are making offers on and off market, doing different strategies. And so I think, for obvious reasons, when people start out house flipping, most of the time it's a hobby or it's a side hustle because you still need a full-time job. You still need to, got bills to pay. So I think not anticipating just how much of the legwork and time and energy and effort and resources it takes to actually even secure the property can scare off a lot of people from even starting in the first place.
Totally. I think another thing is, if you've got to make 100 offers on properties, you've got to have multiple sources for those deals coming into you. So, a lot of people get set up on the MLS and it's great. There's a ton of properties on the MLS. Our last project, we talked about a property that was just sitting on the MLS. Anybody could have picked it up, but there are other deal sources that you need to set up if you want to be turning over every stone. So that's developing relationships with realtors out in the community. That's setting up, paid campaigns, both online, on social media, running direct mail campaigns. Other people will, network with wholesalers, but setting up those various deal flow sources also takes a ton of time. And it's another one of these things that we've set up at Homemade, which is, we aggregate all of those sources into one so that our acquisitions team is underwriting a lot of properties before we ever put that out to, our clients to see, right?
Yep. And I think the next place where people go wrong. Sorry Massiel, you have a question?
So I found this out when I was more in the job, but can you talk to people about what MLS is and how do you get in that?
Totally. So for those of you who don't know, the MLS or the multiple listing service is basically an aggregator of all properties that are publicly listed for sale. So you have to have a membership of it as a licensed real estate agent to get access to that data feed. But a lot of people have access to that data feed through other sources, sometimes through like Redfin or ML or Zillow or a real estate agent that they're working with. But basically, these are all the publicly listed houses for sale. These are people that have raised their hand and say, I want to sell my house and I want you to pay me X dollars for it. And would you like to make an offer? So those are willing sellers, versus if you just drive down the street of your neighborhood and you may want to buy a house, that doesn't mean it's for sale.
Right.
You can knock on that door and ask them, and that obviously takes a ton of work. But the MLS is sort of like a dating app. You know what I mean? If you're on the dating app and you're swiping through, those are people that are
interested in dating.
You're not just walking up to the random person that may be married and saying, hey, do you want to go out? Oh, no, not at this time, not interested, right? So that's the function of the MLS.
Okay, so once somebody does find a project, usually through a wholesaler, I've seen it a lot of times. A pitfall of first timers is they trust the numbers that the wholesaler has presented to them. So, and to be clear, a wholesaler is somebody who finds a property that's for sale, puts that property under contract at a negotiated price, and then has negotiated that price so well that they can then turn that contract over to somebody else. So for example, if I see a house that's for sale for $400,000 on the MLS, for example, and I offer them $350 and they accept, okay, well now I have that under contract at $350. I could go sell that to an investor at $360 or $370 potentially, because it's still under quote unquote the value that the market would say that it's worth.
Right.
And that's a wholesale deal. So a lot of people get started buying from wholesalers who never intend to buy the property or renovate it. They are simply getting it under contract at a good enough deal that they can then sell it to you. And part of the sales process is them saying, hey, it only needs $10,000 worth of work, so you could go sell it for $400 and make a little profit. And the reality is a lot of times those numbers are very sugar-coated in their favor.
Yeah, that's one of the big pitfalls of it, is that if you're buying that from a wholesaler, they have a direct conflict of interest to tell you it'll sell for more on the back end and it'll take less to renovate that property. And typically a wholesaler is not someone with renovation experience, right? So that renovation number is a little bit of a, finger in the air, maybe kind of feels like this. It's typically not been, inspected by them. They don't have hard bids on that. That's their opinion, right? And the appeal of working with those wholesalers, to your point, is because new investors don't have that deal flow, it's a very natural and easy way to get deal flow. You can go straight to a wholesaler and say, hey, you go find these properties. If the numbers still make sense, it's worth paying that markup, that premium to them. But to your point, the problem they run into is this trust factor of being able to trust someone else's numbers, which obviously I think people intuitively know not to do, right? They know to verify it. But the problem is, given the time constraints that you have to make those deals work, you don't have time to go verify that work, that scope of work that they're proposing is real, that you can actually get it done for those numbers. So typically what a lot of new investors will do is they sort of take a bit of a leap of faith, or they guesstimate it, right? So they maybe know enough to say, well, I know and don't need to trust that number exactly. I'm going to presume that the renovation is going to be a little bit more than that, but they don't nail that down to an exact number, right?
Right. And I think let's talk about the time crunch thing, because I think that's a kind of a nuanced point that you don't really realize unless you're in it, which is, so that wholesaler would have that contract on the house that it's good for an option period, which is typically 7 days, sometimes up to 10. And so they have to resell that contract before the option period is up. And so a lot of times, like he's saying, they may present it to you on day 4 and you need to make a decision right then and there. You don't have time to get crews out to bid and give you hard numbers. And you just have to kind of go on faith that, the construction budget is somewhat accurate and that their back end value is somewhat accurate too. I think that's another mistake people make, is they buy with the thought that the house will appreciate in the time that they hold it. And in some markets that's true, and in some markets that's not. So I think that's another newbie mistake as well.
Yeah, totally. Trusting those back end numbers. And I think, if you just believe those back end comps, as it were, you're making a big mistake. But I think, the people that get started investing, that's one of the more intuitive things, is comping and underwriting properties, or at least that I see. A lot of people intuitively get that, and that those data sources are much more reliable to say, hey, look, here's a house that sold or it didn't. And I think people get a pretty intuitive sense for comparing apples to apples. To your point, if they just don't even verify that. Huge mistake, and we see that happen. But those construction numbers really benefit more experienced flippers, right? Because after you've done a number of houses, you know which renovation numbers are BS and which are not. And I think you can, more quickly come into a house, assess the overall condition, and get to that sort of ballpark number. I can do this in a house today where it's like, I can walk in and without having an inspection report, without having any sort of detailed information on it, I can ballpark it and I know, there's about $100K rehab. Now, maybe that is inclusive of an HVAC swap. Maybe it's not. Maybe that is a new roof. Maybe it's not, right? So there are obviously things that, can push that up and down. And I would never just buy a house saying like, good enough, finger in the air. But more often than not, I get a sense for it right out of the gate. And I can tell you whether, you're spinning your wheels to go track down those numbers because the numbers are just way out of line, or, you're pretty close and you want to sharpen your pencil and get to those.
Well, and I think too, something that you mentioned, knowing kind of the price, but also having the relationships with those contractors to even get them to come out and bid on your project, right? So a contractor is coming out, he doesn't know if you're going to get that house. He doesn't know if he's going to get that job. And so there's oftentimes misaligned incentives for them to even come bid in the first place. And if you're an experienced flipper, you benefit from the fact that they know they've worked with you before and they can trust that you're going to come through, versus a new person. It's really hard to establish those vendor networks.
Totally. That's one of the mistakes newbies make, is they turn into the boy that cried wolf for contractors, and rightly so. I think the natural way to start out that relationship is they go to a contractor they want to work with. They say, hey, I'm a new investor. I haven't done a lot of deals, but I'd like to work with you. Come out and bid on my projects. Well, great. They want the work, and some of them will come out and bid. But the problem is when their bid comes back and it's too high, you say, great. Thanks for letting me know. I won't be doing that project. Well, that's time that your contractor just wasted on work that they're not going to get. And you do that enough times, you're the boy that cried wolf. They're not going to come out and bid it. And experienced contractors, you're not even the boy that cried wolf. It's the investors that came before you that are the boys that have cried wolf, because they've done this song and dance a number of times. And so they hardly will work with new folks, let alone come out and give them new bids. And so the ones that will do that, you're left with are the people that are more desperate for work, or who are exactly the contractors that you don't want to be working with, unfortunately.
And yes, and then that's when you get into the quality issues, and especially as a newbie, knowing what is good quality work versus not, and when important things have been missed in the work or not. And so that's where it gets really challenging. And that's kind of what we've tried to troubleshoot with Homemade, which is we've got a network of vendors that we've worked with, that we trust, that we've verified their work over time. And so they're responsive to us when we have a project, and they do good work because they know we're going to hold them to task for what that work looks like.
Totally. So we've solved this problem for our clients because when we put an opportunity together for our clients, we've already run the due diligence, including the scope of work and the bids on it, so that when we're saying, hey, this is the scope of work we're proposing for this house, that's backed by real numbers. And it's detailed enough for the contractors. A lot of times you'll say, we want to do this, we want to do that, and it's too vague versus having a scope that's very detailed and planned out. But the contractors love that because they know what they're bidding exactly. It's not this, finger in the air. Are we opening up this wall? Are we not? We're saying, no, here's exactly what it looks like. Bid to this spec. Exactly. A lot of investors come in and they say, I've got my contractor here. Let's see, what is my scope of work? I want to redo the kitchen. I want to redo these bathrooms. I want a new roof. I want to redo the flooring. Okay, great. Well, redo the kitchen to you means something very different than redo the kitchen means to your contractor, right? And that could mean, great, we're going to paint some cabinets, call it a day, right? Whereas to you, that might mean install an island, open up a wall, do high-end cabinetry, do high-end fixtures. So you got to be very specific.
You're not speaking the same language.
You're not speaking the same language, and because you're on that time crunch, you're leaving some stuff up to interpretation, and that's basically where all the problems come down the line. And so to your point, when we put together a scope of work, it's literally every line by line what exactly we're saying is going to be done to this kitchen, and nothing more and nothing less.
Because that's the other place where people can run afoul the first time, is in that design is, one, not matching the comps in the neighborhood, not looking at recently sold listings in that exact neighborhood to see what the prevailing trends and tastes and level of finish out is. And then also going either one way or the other with it, right? Going what we call like big box special, which is just, as cheap as you can possibly go, is not going to result in a product that can sell quickly on the back end. Especially in today's market, buyers are very particular because they can be, right? There's not a ton of buyers. So they are able to demand that what they're buying is a high quality product. The opposite is true, where people go all out on the design and over improve the property, where maybe it sells right away, but they're still not able to get the price that justifies the increased material cost.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons you and I teamed up when we got started on this is, and I don't know if this is stereotypical, but a lot of times the numbers brain person goes the big box route where they say, oh, I just need to save the money. What's the cheapest possible light fixture I can put in this thing? I was more inclined to think like that when we started out. And then I think a lot of people get into it, that are more design focused, and that goes out the window. Right. And when
what are you saying?
You're pretty good. You're pretty good at being design conscious, but I think it can be hard. Before you and I worked together, I also, I hired some designers to do work on my projects, and I wanted to tear my hair out because they also could not stick to any sense of a budget.
Yeah.
Right.
You're still trying to get a return on your investment, not.
I mean, they would go out and choose a $3,000 chandelier in this thing. And I would be like, well, my client's not going to know that was a $3,000 chandelier.
Right. But there are some materials that I do think are worth going a little bit higher end, and that's on the touch and feel materials. So your countertops, your tile, even I would argue light fixtures, there's a big difference. So, I mean, I do think there's a halo effect from choosing the right materials to upgrade, but I think there's a limit, obviously, right? You still need to make money.
Yeah, this thing's art and science. It's a huge mistake, and it's so easy for that pendulum to swing in either direction, right?
Yeah. It's like Goldilocks, right? You want to be right in the middle, the just right design.
Yeah, so that's on the plan of attack for the house, but I think another big pitfall that newbies face before they even close on the property are the due diligence items, right? Because there are a few things that you can stumble over there that, we've run into firsthand. So we've stumbled over these and, we make sure that our homemade clients definitely don't run into them. But I think, chief among them is an inspection. And this matters more for some houses than others, but we get an inspection on every single house. And, when you're purchasing from a wholesaler, you're not even able to get an inspection on this thing. So you're really flying blind with some potentially big ticket items. Things like the foundation and the roof and the HVAC and the plumbing. So getting that inspection is key. If you don't have an option period, you're going to run into that.
Also running open permit search.
Yes.
This has bit us a time or two where you'll buy a property that has a permit that never got closed out on it. Right. And so now it is your responsibility to get that permit closed before it sells.
Right.
And that's just like a huge, lots of things, hoops that as a first timer, you would not even know to think about to look for. Right?
Totally. That's a major gotcha, because if you're responsible for closing out those old permits, they're going to ask you to bring something up to code currently. And you have no idea what kind of work was done on this thing before. So this actually happened to us back in the day. Purchased a house in 1990 or whatever. They had opened a permit to build a little pergola off of the back of the house. Didn't close out that permit. So we had to bring that thing up to the 2020s or 2010s standards. And it was way more expensive than what we anticipated. So that's a simple little due diligence hack that we do for all our properties now and we put in front of our clients. But it's a stumbling block that if you don't know to look for it, you might trip over it, right?
Yep. It's also flood status.
Yes.
Where the house is relative to the floodplain.
Yes. I can't tell you how many wholesale deals I've seen where they put out a property that's in the floodplain and make no mention of it, which is crazy, right? If you ask them, then they'll say, oh yeah, well, it's in the 100-year floodplain, of course. I thought you knew that. Thought that was implied.
You don't have the flood maps memorized?
Yeah, exactly. But if you don't go and pull that flood report for yourself, that's something that I've seen a ton of people miss. I've had people bring me deals to look at from wholesalers. That's one of the first things I do is I pull up the flood map. It's square in the floodplain, and I've said, hey, did you know this is a floodplain house? Oh, I had no idea.
Right.
I was just looking at the numbers. I got caught up in that, and it's like a floodplain house can still work, but not if those numbers aren't baked into it, if that discount is not baked into it, right?
Well, and going back to the dating analogy, I mean, this is like, swiping right, or what, is that how you swipe right?
I've never swiped, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's like agreeing to go on a date with somebody because, their profile picture and their bio is cute, but like, you're not going to Facebook check them and like see what they've been posting lately. And you're not going to like, do your due diligence online or what you can find out about them. Like, so I think people get caught up in like sort of the romance of it all too. Like, I've got my first project and this is going to be great, and not look for all the kind of like red flags that might prevent you from taking that project on.
Totally. So we do that on every project now. We just go over the floodplain report. We print out that map. Even if it's a house we know is nowhere near the floodplain, for our clients, we print it out, boom, they're right front and center. So there's no,
you know what their mother-in-law is like before you even go on that first date.
Totally. You're putting the ugly pictures right there on the profile pic.
And so for people who don't know what all is implied whenever a house is on a floodplain, like what are the difficulties that come with that for a floodplain house?
Yeah. And so, one of the problems with floodplain house is it's subject to different rules for, how and what you can do to that property. So a lot of times you're restricted on how much you can renovate. We ran into a project that, we were renovating that was just next to the floodplain, and it was clearly out of it, but we got caught and said the city made us apply the floodplain rules to it, which was another lesson learned. But basically we could only spend up to half of the home's value on the renovation itself, which in a house that's in a lot of distress is
a big deal
because we were limited. Also when you basically go to sell this thing on the back end, it limits your buyer pool. There's
harder to get insured.
There's special insurance that's going to be required for it. And, the people that buy it, nobody wants to be buying a house that's in a floodplain. And if you are going to be somebody buying in a floodplain, you want to buy that at a discount, right? And now there's some areas of the country, like, on the coast or near lakes or whatever, where that's kind of the deal. It comes with the territory. But in a place like Austin, where, there are flood plains and areas that are not, you're not just saying, oh, well, if I live in Austin, I have to live in a floodplain. You're not on the coast or something.
Right. Totally.
So it
can make a big deal for when you go to sell it on the back end.
Totally.
Well, I think the biggest problem people make is not taking our course.
Oh, that's a huge mistake. I mean,
but seriously, we have had clients tell us that the course saved them $50,000 because of this kind of stuff that we talk about in there, which is basically everything you want to know if you're thinking about doing your first flip.
To be honest, not paying for a little bit of
mentorship
or some sort of education, you're about to go drop $500,000 sometimes on a project, and you don't want to spend $500 to say, hey, what do these two idiots on the internet have to say? Because honestly, one little tip like that, like, hey, go check the floodplain. Like I said, that right there can save you tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And
basically don't make all the mistakes we've made.
Yeah.
Is what we should call the course.
Yeah.
Don't make all the mistakes we've made.
Yeah, totally. So totally. And we're not the only people doing there. So like, you don't have to buy our course, do it if you want, but there is plenty of education and resources out there. And, I would definitely not jump headfirst into this thing without doing a little bit of due diligence, a little bit of homework. If you want to skip that, that's why we created Homemade, right?
Exactly.
Shout out Homemade, plug right there, because basically we're taking this is almost like a franchise model, all of these steps, and we're packaging it together. So you don't need to pick and choose. Like we've packaged it all together for you as, this franchise type model to help you, cut the line on learning all of these stupid little things we've learned the hard way, mistakes we've seen other people make.
Yeah, so press the easy button really, so that you can do this and also keep your full-time job or do whatever it is that you like and enjoy doing, and you can have this investment without it consuming your life.
Totally. Yeah, I tell people it's like Shopify. If you want to sell something online, like you don't need to be Amazon, you need to be Walmart, you don't need to have a huge e-commerce store. You need like these back-end tools powering, this side hustle, this hobby. And that's what flipping should feel like. That's what it should be. That's what we're building Homemade to be, is that Shopify app powering the back end of your storefront. So you can focus on what you need to focus on.
Yeah. And to your point, these are not unknown problems. flippers have been running into this for all of time. It's just, we feel like we're the first people to package that all in a service product that makes it easy to say yes when the investment is right for you. So anyway, this has been fun. It's a little negative.
Yeah, you gotta get the clickbait in there, man. You gotta get people to watch this. But
people kind of like negative though.
But we get these questions all the time, like mistakes to avoid or where should I get started. I think going into it eyes wide open up front, knowing where some of these pitfalls are is a huge help. And I think knowing there are things you don't know is half of the battle, right?
Yep, totally. And knowing what those things are is the other half, and adjusting course.
Yeah, totally. Well, this has been a good one. If, again, if you guys want to learn more, if you want to get started, go check out our course. We'll link it in the description. Or if you want to work with us, push that easy button and skip the line. We would love to work together with you guys at Homemade. That's why we created a whole company around it, is to help avoid these problems for you guys. So appreciate you guys watching this episode of the Austin Flipsters podcast. And I guess we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Stay tuned. Episode 8 coming soon.
Peace.